August 1831. The air hung heavy and hot over Southampton County, Virginia. A sweltering sun beat down on fertile fields, the very land itself a testament to the brutal economics of slavery. Southampton, a rural county stitched together by dirt roads and sprawling plantations, was a place of stark contrasts. Grand manor houses, shaded by ancient oaks and magnolias, stood as silent sentinels over a world built on forced labor. The laughter of children playing on wide verandas, a jarring counterpoint to the muffled sobs carried on the wind from the slave quarters. Southampton was a place of whispers, secrets shared in hushed tones under the cover of darkness. Stories of escape, of freedom found in the North Star passed from one generation to the next. But these stories were laced with fear, with the ever-present threat of the whip, the auction block, the family torn asunder. In this world where hope was a dangerous thing to cling to, the enslaved population lived with a quiet desperation, their spirits unbroken but bowed low by the weight of their chains. For the white residents of Southampton, life held a different rhythm. Days were measured out in the endless cycle of planting and harvest, in the rituals of southern gentility. There were grand balls held in candlelit ballrooms where ladies in silk gowns and gentlemen in linen suits danced to the strains of violins, their gaiety fueled by the fruits of unpaid labor. Church services on Sunday mornings provided a veneer of piety, a way to justify the sin of slavery in the eyes of God and man. But beneath the surface of this carefully constructed world, a current of unease ran deep. Rumors of slave uprisings in other parts of the South had reached Southampton, carried on newspapers and the tongues of travelers. The white community, outnumbered by the enslaved population, lived in a state of perpetual anxiety, haunted by the fear of rebellion, of the day when the oppressed might rise up and demand their due. This fear, though unspoken, permeated every interaction between master and slave, casting a long shadow over the seemingly peaceful landscape of Southampton County. The institution of slavery was a festering wound on the soul of America, and Southampton County was no exception. The very air crackled with the tension between master and slave, a constant reminder of the power imbalance that defined their existence. For the enslaved men and women who toiled in the fields, tended to the needs of their masters, and lived their lives under the constant threat of violence, resentment simmered just below the surface. Each lash of the whip, each instance of humiliation, each family member sold away, fueled the fires of their discontent. The white community, while clinging to the belief that their slaves were content with their lot in life, couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Theirs was a world built on a foundation of sand, constantly shifting, always on the verge of collapse. They responded to their unease with a mixture of paternalism and brutality, convinced that the only way to maintain control was through a system of rewards and punishments. Kindness, when it was shown, was often tinged with condescension, a way of reminding the enslaved of their place in the social order. But beneath the facade of Southern hospitality, fear festered. Fear of the unknown, fear of the enslaved population they sought to control, fear of the day when the carefully constructed walls of their world would come crashing down. This fear manifested in different ways. Some turned to religion, seeking solace in the belief that slavery was ordained by God. Others found comfort in the camaraderie of their fellow slave owners, sharing stories of uprisings, real and imagined, reinforcing their belief that they were engaged in a constant battle for their very survival. The enslaved population, though forbidden from congregating without the presence of a white overseer, found ways to communicate, to share their hopes and fears, to nurture the seeds of resistance. Secret meetings were held in the dead of night, in the hush of the slave quarters, in the fields under the watchful eyes of the stars. Songs, heavy with the weight of their sorrow and longing for freedom, were passed down through generations, serving as a source of comfort and a call to action. Whispers of freedom carried on the wind from the north reached the ears of the enslaved population of Southampton County. Stories of abolitionists ignited hope in the hearts of those resigned to a life in chains. These stories reminded them of a world where black men and women could live freely. Religion became a source of strength and solace. The Bible offered messages of hope and liberation. The story of Moses resonated deeply, providing a template for their own dreams of freedom. Secret prayer meetings offered a space to seek guidance and strength. Dreams of deliverance took many forms. Some fantasized about escaping to the north, following the North Star to freedom. Others dared to imagine a day when slavery would be abolished. These dreams, though often whispered, held the power to sustain the human spirit.
Born into slavery in 1800, I was different. I learned to read and write, devouring the Bible with a thirst for knowledge. I found solace in the scriptures inspired by prophets and liberators.
Nat exhibited deep spirituality, claiming visions and voices guiding his path. He believed he was chosen by God for a special purpose, transcending slavery.
My sermons spread hope and resistance, speaking of a day of reckoning.
Nat's visions intensified, seeing signs in the natural world, embracing his destiny. The weight of prophecy pressed heavily on Nat Turner's shoulders. He carried the burden of his people's suffering. He spent hours in prayer and fasting, seeking guidance from God. In his visions, he saw rivers of blood, fields littered with the bodies of the slain. The voice of God commanded him to rise up, to lead his people out of bondage. The time for action had come. February 1831. An eerie silence fell over Southampton County. The sun began to disappear behind the moon, casting an unnatural twilight. A chill ran through the air.
For the enslaved, the eclipse was a sign of change.
Nat Turner saw it as a divine sign. He believed it symbolized the fall of the slaveholders. He interpreted it as a call to action.
The eclipse had a profound effect on the enslaved community. Whispers of prophecies spread like wildfire.
The event transformed apprehension into a desire for liberation. The time for passive acceptance was over. The time for action was at hand. Nat began to organize his followers, planning the uprising. He knew the risks were immense, but he was convinced that God was on his side. Under the cloak of night, Nat and his lieutenants met in secret. They gathered in secluded clearings, their faces illuminated by flickering candlelight. They spoke in hushed tones, eyes burning with determination.
I outlined my plan, a daring strike against the slaveholding class. We would move from plantation to plantation, liberating our brethren. Our goal is to dismantle the institution of slavery itself.
Bound by faith and desire for freedom, they swore an oath of secrecy. They knew their lives were forfeit once the rebellion began. Prepared to fight and die for liberty, they sought a better world.
Anticipation and nervous energy settled over the enslaved community. The whispers grew louder, the stolen glances more knowing. Axes and scythes were secretly sharpened, transformed into instruments of liberation.
The rebellion, like a storm gathering strength, was about to be unleashed. August 21st, 1831. A sweltering Sunday night. The air, heavy with humidity, seemed to crackle with an unspoken tension. In the big house, the Travis family slept, unaware of the storm that was about to break. Their world, built on the backs of enslaved men and women, was about to be shattered.
Outside, under the pale light of a waning moon, I gathered with 6 followers. Our faces were grim, our resolve hardened by years of oppression. This was the night of the axe.
They moved with a purpose, their steps barely disturbing the quiet night. Entering the Travis house, the silence was shattered by the swift, brutal swing of an axe. Fear, raw and primal, filled the air. The Travis family, caught in the throes of a nightmare, didn't stand a chance. There would be no mercy tonight, not for those who had shown none to them for generations.
The rebellion, planned in hushed tones and secret meetings, had begun. This was not a spontaneous act of rage, but a calculated strike against the institution of slavery itself. Driven by unwavering faith and the weight of prophecy, I led my followers with steely determination, our thirst for freedom outweighing our fear.
As the night wore on, the rebellion spread like wildfire through the countryside. From plantation to plantation they rode, their numbers swelling with each freed soul who joined their ranks. The enslaved, emboldened by their liberators' courage, took up whatever weapons they could find, farm tools, knives, even their bare hands, and rose up against their oppressors. The rebellion's path was marked by violence, a grim testament to the brutality inherent in the institution of slavery.
As a man of God, I wrestled with the bloodshed, but believed it was a necessary evil to break the chains that bound my people. I saw it as righteous retribution for the countless lives lost, the families torn apart, the spirits crushed under oppression.
They rode through the night, their numbers growing, their resolve hardening with each victory. Their targets were carefully chosen, slave owners and overseers, symbols of the system that had dehumanized them for so long. They showed no mercy to those who had shown them none, their actions fueled by a deep-seated rage that had been simmering for generations.
Word of the rebellion spread like wildfire, carried on the wind, whispered from slave cabin to slave cabin. Fear gripped the hearts of white plantation owners who barricaded themselves in their homes, terrified of the retribution that was coming for them. They had underestimated us, dismissed us as docile and content, and now they were paying the price for their arrogance.
The rebellion's path was not one of wanton destruction. Nat Turner maintained a strict code of conduct, forbidding his followers from looting or committing acts of gratuitous violence. Their mission was liberation, not revenge, and he was determined to maintain the moral high ground, even in the midst of bloodshed. As the sun rose on August 22nd, the Southampton countryside was in chaos. The news of the rebellion spread like wildfire, carried by terrified messengers on horseback. Fear gripped the white community. They had lived with the unspoken dread of an uprising.
Whispers of fear echoed through the grand plantation houses. Women clutched their children close, their eyes wide with terror. Men, armed with muskets and pistols, formed posses.
But amidst the fear there were shouts of defiance. Some refused to believe their property could rise up against them. They clung to the belief that the rebellion was the work of outside agitators.
The local militia was called out, reinforced by volunteers from neighboring counties. They rode out with a vengeance, their mission to restore order at any cost.
For the enslaved population of Southampton County, the rebellion, though short-lived, was a moment of profound significance. It was a glimmer of hope in the darkness, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who refused to be broken by the chains of slavery.
Even those who did not participate in the uprising felt a surge of pride, a sense of solidarity with those who dared to fight for their freedom. But the hope was tempered by a tide of uncertainty.
They knew that retribution would be swift and brutal, that the white community would strike back with a vengeance. The fear that had always been present in their lives now took on a new urgency, a palpable sense of dread that permeated every aspect of their existence.
In the fields, where they once toiled under the watchful eyes of overseers, they now worked with a newfound sense of purpose, their movements infused with a quiet determination. The songs they sang, once filled with sorrow and longing, now carried a note of defiance, a glimmer of hope for a better future.
The rebellion had irrevocably shattered the illusion of peace and order that had existed in Southampton County. It had exposed the raw nerves of a society built on a foundation of injustice, and the repercussions would be felt for generations to come. Panic swept through Southampton County, transforming the world into a landscape of fear. The rebellion shook the foundation of their society, built on the backs of enslaved people. The enslaved, once seen as docile, were now a terrifying unknown.
Families huddled in dark rooms, listening in terror to every sound.
The night was alive with fear. Barking dogs, distant gunshots, whispered prayers. Rumors spread like wildfire, whispering of a coordinated attack. Abolitionists were blamed, their ideas seen as poison. Men armed themselves, forming posses to crush the rebellion. The tide turned swiftly. The local militia, a ragtag group of farmers and shopkeepers, faced a full-blown rebellion. Reinforcements arrived, eager to defend their way of life.
They rode out with a vengeance, their faces grim. On a mission to crush the rebellion, they showed no mercy.
The pursuit was relentless, a brutal display of force. They swept through the countryside, marked by gunshots and smoke. No mercy was shown to those suspected of rebellion.
The rebels fought desperately, but were outmatched. Their resistance was no match for the militia's might. Captured or killed, their bodies were left in the sun.
A reckoning in blood, the capture and its aftermath. Nat Turner, the prophet of rebellion, eluded capture for weeks. He moved like a ghost through the swamps and forests, but the net was closing in. The reward for his capture fueled the pursuit.
On October 30th, 1831, my luck ran out. A white man discovered my hiding place. Surrounded and outnumbered, I offered no resistance.
The news of his capture spread like wildfire. His trial was swift. Found guilty of insurrection, he was sentenced to death. On November 11th, 1831, he was hanged.
The aftermath of the rebellion was a bloodbath. The white community unleashed a reign of terror. Suspected rebels were lynched, tortured, and murdered. Their bodies served as grim reminders of defiance.
Seeds of fear, the lingering shadow of rebellion. The Nat Turner rebellion cast a long shadow over the South. It planted seeds of fear in white Southerners, leading to paranoia and repression. Laws tightened, movements restricted, and slavery justified to maintain order. The rebellion fueled the abolitionist movement in the North. It exposed a deeply divided nation, echoing long after the Civil War. The reckoning, justice, or vengeance. In the wake of the rebellion, retribution washed over Southampton County, leaving sorrow and despair. The capture of Nat Turner did little to quell the fear and rage gripping the white community. They demanded justice, a reckoning for the blood spilled and lives lost.
The trials were swift and merciless, a mere formality. Captured rebels, bearing marks of torture, faced hastily assembled courts. The legal system served the powerful, reasserting the dominance of the white planter class.
Punishments were brutal, designed to deter future uprisings and instill fear. Many rebels were hanged, their bodies left as grim reminders. Others were sold south, ripped from their families, sent to brutal labor camps. The trials deepened the divide, sowing seeds of resentment and distrust. They perpetuated the cycle of violence and oppression in the South. Shifting sands, the tightening grip of slavery. The Nat Turner Rebellion marked a turning point in the history of slavery in America. Fear led to a tightening of the reins, a hardening of attitudes, and repressive legislation. Slavery, once defended economically, was now seen as essential for order.
State legislatures enacted draconian laws restricting freedoms of enslaved people. Assembly was forbidden, literacy punished, and religious gatherings surveilled.
The white South sought to crush the spirit of the enslaved. Slavery became even more oppressive. The whip became an instrument of control.
The enslaved faced a bleak future. The Nat Turner Rebellion exposed the fault line in American society.
Slavery was morally reprehensible and unstable. The tightening grip of slavery hastened the coming storm. Echoes of trauma scars on the soul of Southampton. The trauma of the rebellion lingered long after the blood had been washed from the streets of Southampton County. The scars ran deep, etched not only on the land itself, but also on the souls of those who had witnessed the horrors firsthand. The world they had known, a world defined by the rigid hierarchies of slavery, had been irrevocably shattered.
For the white community, the rebellion was a haunting reminder of their own vulnerability. Their carefully constructed world, built on the backs of enslaved people, had been shaken to its core. The fear that had always simmered beneath the surface now took root, poisoning their relationships with their neighbors, their communities, and even their own families.
The enslaved population, though they had borne the brunt of the violence, emerged from the rebellion with a renewed sense of purpose. The memory of those who had fought and died for their freedom served as a source of inspiration, a testament to the indomitable human spirit. The rebellion, though ultimately unsuccessful, had shown them that resistance was possible, that the chains of slavery, though strong, could be broken.
But the trauma of the rebellion also left its mark on the enslaved community. The violence they had witnessed, the loss they had endured, cast a long shadow over their lives. The world had become a more dangerous place, their every action scrutinized, their every movement restricted. The hope that had flickered during those brief days of rebellion was tempered by the sobering reality of their situation.
The unquiet dead martyrs and monsters. In the aftermath of the rebellion, Nat Turner became a figure of immense symbolic power. His name, once whispered in fear, now echoed through history, a testament to the enduring human desire for freedom.
For many white Southerners, Nat Turner was the embodiment of their worst nightmares, a symbol of black rage and rebellion. His name was invoked to justify the tightening grip of slavery, to demonize abolitionists, and to quell any hint of dissent among the enslaved population.
But for many African Americans, both free and enslaved, Nat Turner was a hero, a symbol of resistance against impossible odds.
The Nat Turner Rebellion and the man who led it continues to spark debate and controversy to this day.
Nat Turner, both martyr and monster, remains an enigmatic and enduring figure, a symbol of the enduring legacy of slavery and the ongoing struggle for racial justice in America. The confessions, a narrative twisted in fear. The air hung heavy in the cramped jail cell, thick with the stench of fear and sweat. Nat Turner, his body broken but his spirit unbroken, sat across from Thomas R. Gray.
Gray, his pen scratching furiously, sought to understand Turner, to make sense of the chaos.
The narrative he crafted was as much a product of his own fears and prejudices. He painted Turner as a fanatic, ignoring the systemic brutality that fueled the uprising. The written word, amplifying fear, igniting resistance. Gray's account of the rebellion, riddled with inaccuracies and fueled by the anxieties of the white South, spread like wildfire throughout the nation. Newspapers eager to capitalize on the sensational story reprinted excerpts, often accompanied by lurid illustrations that demonized Turner and his followers. The institution of slavery, once defended on economic grounds, was now deemed essential for preserving the Southern way of life, for protecting white families from the perceived threat of black violence. Abolitionists, outraged by the brutality of the Southern response and the distorted narrative presented in the confessions, seized upon Turner's story as a powerful indictment of slavery. The Nat Turner Rebellion, though brutally suppressed, ignited a firestorm of debate about the morality and sustainability of slavery in America. The written word, far from quelling dissent, became a battleground for competing narratives, a powerful tool in the fight for hearts and minds that would ultimately lead to the Civil War. In the South, the Confession served as a rallying cry for those who sought to tighten the reins of slavery. Politicians, citing Turner's rebellion as evidence of the inherent dangers of educating slaves and allowing them religious freedom, enacted a wave of repressive legislation designed to quell any hint of dissent. Legacies of brutality, laws forged in the crucible of terror. The shockwaves from the Nat Turner Rebellion reverberated throughout the South, leaving an indelible mark on the legal landscape. State legislatures, fueled by fear and a determination to prevent future uprisings, enacted a wave of repressive legislation that tightened the already iron grip of slavery. The new laws were designed to strip enslaved people of even the most basic freedoms, to transform them into little more than chattel in the eyes of the law. Literacy, once seen by some slave owners as a path to more productive labor, was now deemed a dangerous tool that could incite rebellion. Religious gatherings, once a source of solace and community for the enslaved, were now viewed with suspicion, seen as potential breeding grounds for insurrection. The Black Codes, enacted in the wake of the Nat Turner Rebellion, represented a significant escalation in the South's commitment to white supremacy and the institution of slavery. These laws, forged in the crucible of terror, would cast a long shadow over the lives of African Americans, both free and enslaved, for generations to come, their legacy a stark reminder of the enduring power of fear to shape the course of human history. The blood spilled in Southampton County did not flow in vain. The Nat Turner Rebellion, though brutally suppressed, sent shockwaves through the nation, exposing the moral bankruptcy of slavery and galvanizing the abolitionist movement.
In the North, where the institution of slavery had long been viewed with unease, the rebellion sparked a wave of outrage and a renewed commitment to the cause of emancipation.
Abolitionist newspapers, once relegated to the fringes of society, experienced a surge in readership, their pages filled with first-hand accounts of the horrors of slavery and impassioned pleas for justice.
Frederick Douglass, a former slave who would become one of the most eloquent voices of the abolitionist movement, pointed to the Turner Rebellion as evidence that slavery could not be contained, that it posed a threat not only to the enslaved, but to the very soul of the nation.
The rebellion also breathed new life into the Underground Railroad, the clandestine network of safe houses and abolitionists who risked their lives to help slaves escape to freedom. The Nat Turner Rebellion, though a tragedy in its own right, served as a turning point in the fight against slavery in America. The ghost of Nat Turner haunted the American conscience long after the rebellion was quelled in blood. His name, once whispered in hushed tones, became a byword for the terrors that lurked beneath the veneer of Southern gentility. He became a symbol, both reviled and revered, of the enduring struggle for racial justice in America. For many white Americans, Turner represented the embodiment of their deepest fears, the specter of black uprising, the potential for violence to disrupt the established order. His rebellion served as a stark reminder of the human cost of slavery, of the simmering rage that lay just beneath the surface of Southern society. But Turner's legacy was far more complex than the one-dimensional villain often portrayed in history books. He was a man of deep faith, a gifted preacher who believed he was chosen by God to lead his people to freedom. The Nat Turner Rebellion challenged white Americans to confront the hypocrisy at the heart of their nation, a nation founded on the principles of liberty and equality, yet built on the backs of enslaved people. The Nat Turner Rebellion was a watershed moment in American history, a stark illustration of the growing divide between North and South. It exposed the fault lines that ran through the nation's soul, fault lines that would eventually erupt into the cataclysm of the Civil War. In the South, the rebellion fueled a wave of paranoia and repression. White Southerners, terrified of further uprisings, tightened their grip on the enslaved population. They enacted stricter slave codes, limited black movement and assembly, and cracked down on any perceived threat to the institution of slavery. In the North, the rebellion ignited a firestorm of outrage and activism. Abolitionists, once a marginalized group, gained new converts and increased support. The Nat Turner Rebellion did not cause the Civil War, but it exposed the irreconcilable differences between North and South, between those who believed in the inherent equality of all people and those who clung to the belief that one race was superior to another. The Nat Turner Rebellion, though brutally suppressed, left an enduring legacy of resistance in its wake. It served as a beacon of hope for the oppressed, a testament to the indomitable human spirit that refuses to be broken, even in the face of unimaginable cruelty. The rebellion inspired generations of African Americans to fight for their freedom, both literally and figuratively. It reminded them that the chains of slavery, though heavy, could be broken. Turner's rebellion reverberated through the decades, inspiring countless acts of resistance, both large and small. It fueled the fight for civil rights, the struggle for voting rights, the ongoing movement for racial justice that continues to this day. The whispers of freedom that Nat Turner ignited in 1831 continue to echo through the halls of history. The Nat Turner Rebellion, though a distant echo from the past, continues to hold relevance in the 21st century. It serves as a stark reminder of the enduring legacy of slavery, the systemic racism that still infects American society, and the urgent need to confront the nation's troubled history.
The echoes of Turner's rebellion can be heard in the ongoing struggle for racial justice, in the fight against police brutality, in the movement for economic equality. The same systems of oppression that Turner fought against in 1831 continue to disenfranchise and disadvantage Black Americans today.
The legacy of slavery is not confined to the past. It lives on in the racial disparities that persist in education, healthcare, housing, and criminal justice.
The work that Nat Turner began is far from finished. We must honor the memory of those who fought for freedom, not just with words, but with action.